This podcast is part of the Game and Entertainment Network. Visit tgenetwork.net to find the latest episodes from all our shows.
It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Agronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the thing, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belgast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 84. Tonight, I am joined by Ashgar.
Hello.
Grace.
Hello.
Kodra.
Hey there.
Tam.
Hello.
I hate
It's really
y'all.
too bad the part that makes you laugh is going to get filtered out.
Yeah, I know, like, failing.
Hey.
So, up an explanation, because all the silence is going to get truncated, because I do that anyway. And what they're doing is they're stressing me out by waiting a really long time to answer. So, for the folks at home, that's what's happening and why I laugh.
To be fair, mostly I was waiting because I was laughing so hard I didn't want to be laughing.
Yeah. You guys. So, tonight is going to be an interesting night because usually we have specific games that we want to talk about, but this evening we rattled off a list of topics that are not specific to games, and we don't really know how they're going to go, but it sounds like it's going to be a really full show. Let's just get straight into it with the first one. Grace, you put this on the list, and I actually expected this to come from like a TAM, but stealth as a game mechanic.
Yeah, so I'm sure that most of us have been playing a lot of Fallout 4, and I guess I should preface this by saying that in games in general, if something forces me into a stealth mechanic that's got like a really punitive sort of, if something detects you, you're screwed. I absolutely hate it with just a fiery passion.
As do I.
But as I've been playing Fallout 4, I've actually been suddenly drawn to the stealth mechanic and specifically using like rifles and things to shoot bad guys from very, very far away, or sneaking up and headshotting them. And in this game, it feels really, really, really satisfying. And so I don't know, it struck me that because it was so unusual for me to like that sort of gameplay, that I thought it would be worth talking about. And I think for me, the difference is that it's really beneficial to be stealth and to sneak around and get that bonus damage and get that headshot when I can, line up the shot perfectly. But when something finally sees me and detects me, I can still kick its ass.
Well, I feel part of it in this game. Like, I hate stealth mechanics generally speaking, but I find myself even sneaking around in this game, and I've done it in Elder Scrolls games too, because there are just times that it's really punitive if you go into a battle and they've seen you first.
I don't know
sorry,
what you guys are talking about.
Did I just hear Belle
Yeah.
talk about displaying restraint?
Yeah. No, there are absolute moments in this game where I feel like I am screwed if I do not get the upper hand.
Hey, Belle.
Yeah.
Your endurance.
Yeah.
My endurance is actually pretty low.
Okay, that explains it. I was
well-
like, I kind of lumber in my power armor, and I don't care who knows what's coming, because
Well, so I say it's low, but it's like 6 or 7.
It's not actually.
So
That's not low. I'm
But-
lumbering
I
in
think
a
I'm running
bunch of
around with a
power
7.
armor.
I never
and
use
I've
power
got a
armor.
sword out.
Okay,
I-
so
I-
here's the other thing. I really enjoy the fact that I can stealth in power armor.
That's really cool.
How does that even work?
Yeah, I don't know how
I don't
believable
know.
that is, but
Stealth
sure.
boys. They've got a permanent stealth boy.
It's not as effective, but it's doable.
Right. Yeah, it's more difficult, but it feels weirdly satisfying.
So I'm actually looking at a lot of games on my list, and I like a lot of games that don't seem to have obvious stealth mechanics, but I recall, like, I'm looking at Mirror's Edge in particular, where I don't actually think there's like a stealth mode where like your visibility versus your like whatnot is apparent, and maybe there's all of that running under the hood, but I definitely remember sort of waiting, and like that's what I love about stealth mechanics is I love sitting there doing nothing, waiting for the game to revolve around me so that I can make the optimal move.
Stealth is very much a means to an end to me. Like, I just use it as my opening salvo. And I'm not usually waiting to get back into stealth after each attack. I'm just trying to set up and take the thing that's of most danger out first, and then get behind cover and take out individual mobs at that point as they come to me.
I've definitely had the experience of picking off like the entirety of the guards around a structure by shooting them, hiding again, running around and finding their friends, patiently waiting for them to walk in front of me, and it's just incredibly satisfying.
I haven't done this in Fallout, but that was a very large part of my experience in Skyrim.
Yes, that was absolutely my standard way of playing Skyrim. Was how many of these guys can I take out with arrows to the head before anybody actually thinks that they're in danger? And usually the answer was all of them, because NPCs in Skyrim were incredibly stupid.
I don't have that kind of patience.
So I'm curious. You mentioned you really hate games that have forced stealth. What is an example? Like, have you played any games that are really focused on stealth, like any of the Thief series, or I guess?
Okay, maybe I was gonna wait.
I go for like Deus Ex first.
Yeah.
So possibly this is probably going to surprise a few people here. I really don't like the Siphon Filter series, despite the fact that it is presumably a stealth spy, totally up my alley game series.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because it does a particular thing. It does, and what I imagine when Grace mentions like a punitive stealth segment, I think of levels that I played in Siphon Filter, which I picked up because it's a stealth game. I like stealth games where there's a space, there's like maybe 6 or 7 guys roaming through it, and if any of them see you, game over.
Yep.
That sucks.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's. I was thinking of specifically things like some of the stealth missions in the Secret World,
Yep.
where like you
Same
make
deal.
Yes.
one
Oh, yeah.
misstep.
And it's awful. And that's like stealth. That is, I virulently hate those games.
See,
Well,
it's
and
the same
there's-
problem I have with Metal Gear Solid, because it had a lot of that too.
Yep. Same thing.
Oh, you got seen? Game over.
Didn't
and that's the problem, is there's no like gradation. It's just
Yes.
you screwed up, you're done. Not you screwed up, but there's a way for you to recover this from
I'm
this.
pretty
Later
This
Metal
is
Gear
why-
games got better at that, but the first one is not great.
This
I'm
is
pretty-
why I love games like Thief and Dishonored, Deus Ex, because and Bethesda games like Skyrim and Fallout, because for me, being stealthy is me being smarter than my enemies. And like that's the big thing that I like being in games, is smarter than my opponents, because I'm never stronger than them. I'm never burlier. Like that's just not me. But smarter, yeah. And I don't really get to display that unless I'm like being sneaky and being clever.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's good, like I think it's good in a game like Fallout, because you don't have to.
Yeah, I think that it's exactly it. Like, I don't have to. I know that if I want to, I can, put on my power armor, get a minigun, and just charge in, guns blazing. But, man, it's just so much more personally satisfying to sit patiently for 30 seconds and get that perfect headshot.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you never need to, but you can.
Yeah, and to know that if things don't go right, you can still recover from this.
Mhm.
You
Yes.
can handle that guy in a stand-up fight if you need to, but it would be more satisfying for him to never actually see you.
Right.
The big place that I use stealth is, so like I'm not much in the sniper thing in Fallout 4, but what I like to do is I like to sneak around to a vantage point to where I can lead all of the mobs down a specific approach vector, so that I can pick them off easily as they run down the hall towards me or run, basically down a line of fire.
Yeah.
And so I will set that up, and it's basically like knocking over dominoes that once it's started, I don't care about stealth anymore. But I am minimizing the risk by forcing them to come through a specific point of entry.
And I actually do this a lot in Skyrim and Fallout. Less so in other games, but yeah, setting up traps and luring enemies into them is another kind of like, I don't know, for me it's another sort of like expression that I'm smarter than my opponents.
I love games about making traps and having people get pulled into them. That just watching a plan come together is very fun for me.
Yeah.
Now, there was a game that you missed in all of that, which is, I think, both very good and then has points where it falls on its face, which is the Hitman series.
Oh, absolutely.
And Hitman 2, I want to say, one of the very first missions is you're in Russia and you have to assassinate this one guy and you cannot be seen until you kill him, and that mission just
misery
ruined the entire experience for me.
Absolutely. Well, because the moment that you have to, the moment where the game says you must do this, it stops being about being smarter than your enemies. It's just a stupid binary mechanic.
Well, and the situations that frustrate me the most is when you have a game that is not a stealth game. Like, it is not really the focus of the game, and then you have a forced stealth sequence. I am mostly thinking of Far Cry 3, which the very opening of Far Cry 3, you have to stealth around or you're just straight dead. Like, if you get seen, you're dead.
Yep.
A lot of our games do this.
And they're not very good at explaining to you how you're supposed to do this either.
And
bad.
Another example is Wolfenstein, the Old Blood. There's a whole sequence where you just have to stealth. Like, you have no way to fight these things, so you have to stealth around and pick your way through the early missions. And it's just frustrating, because I know once the game gets going, it's not going to be about this.
Yeah, I was about to say, the New Order is pretty good about letting you go crazy, guns blazing the whole way through. I didn't, but you can.
And that was the disappointing thing about the Old Blood. Like, I thought the Old Blood was a pretty good game, but it had these sequences of forced stealth that you could not get around. Whereas New Order, at every point, let me choose. Do I want to go in guns blazing? Do I want to draw mobs out and take them on my own terms? Or do I want to just go in and assassinate the leaders? And all three of those were valid ways to play that game.
I do think there are a lot of games that I love the stealth mechanics in, because I love sitting around and listening to the idle conversation. I love listening to the people chatting while you're just completely, while you're not there, and like hearing the hilarious, the funny writing that pops up from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like being a fly on the wall.
But oh man, I have not really had as tense of a stealth experience as I did when I was playing the original Thief. Because that was a game where the fidelity of the interface that you get in a lot of more modern stealth games wasn't there. And so you were entirely relying on sounds and audible cues for a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah, like it didn't have a radar, it didn't have
a radar, it didn't have any of like the things that make stealth games even a little bit approachable, accessible. And the way you did that game was you listened for audio cues and you had to try and imagine the map around you to figure out where people were, and it was tense.
Full disclosure, I actually turn off the map and radar in every stealth game I play.
Okay.
Because it makes the experience so much more immersive, because I have to look around and I have to listen. I don't stare at my HUD. Because it's so easy. Like, Deus Ex didn't let me turn off the radar, and I caught myself not looking at the screen, but looking at the radar to see where my opponents were. And like...
Yup.
But if you get seen in Thief, you can get away. You can change You can make decisions. Like, if you make a mistake, you can fix it. And the worst missions in Thief, that they mostly got rid of in later installments, are the ones where if you get seen, the mission ends. And those are terrible. Like, that's just a terrible implementation. But unfortunately, it's what a lot of people think of when they think of stealth games.
Well, that's exactly what I always think of when I think of stealth games.
And most good stealth games don't even have that at all.
Yeah.
Like, especially more modern ones. Like, Dishonored doesn't have a level like that even remotely. The later Thief games certainly don't.
Yeah.
Deus Ex doesn't. I mean, certainly, if you're playing a very stealthy build and you get seen, like, it's probably not awesome times for you.
So, I'm curious, does anyone in here play sort of what I would consider kind of the opposite of stealth games, which is horror games? And
Can't stand them. I've tried them, but I can't play them. I just don't enjoy them at all.
yeah, so one of my favorite, I don't typically like them. One of my favorite horror games, though, that I absolutely loved was Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth. And
I have tried to love this game.
And one of my favorite stealth stories comes from here. There is a level, the story, the game's plot is literally The Shadow over Innsmouth. Like, that H.P. Lovecraft short story is the plot of this game. And when you're staying the night, all of the townsfolk decide, well, he knows too much, it's time to kill him. And you have to, like, run through this town, avoiding everyone, because at this point you don't have a weapon. And there were moments where it's like, I was seen, but I was moving so fast that I got, like, I was trying to stealth my way, but there's a moment where it's like, I can't figure out how to stealth this, I just have to make a break for it, and then suddenly it's like, I'm now trying to get myself into a new hiding place, and I am surrounded by people. And it was the most tense moment, but it felt so good. Like, when stealth goes wrong, and, like, the experience of making that right again feels very, very good to me.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of those. Like, honestly, I loved the Resident Evil series until you got to the point where you need to run from a big bad mob that you can't fight. And, like, I'm mostly thinking of the Nemesis series. Like, you get attacked by Nemesis, and you can't do anything. You need to run. And I hate that. Like, I don't want to run. I want to be able to fight. I don't want to have to get away and slink into the corners and you know, hope it passes. I want to take it out. Like, I want to kill it now.
It sort of goes back to that player fantasy thing. Like, I want to be smarter than my enemies. Bell wants to be bigger than his enemies.
Did you ever play Mark of the Ninja, Bell?
Me? Oh.
Bell.
No, I didn't.
Okay. Like, that's a game that lets you kill a lot of people. Like, it's that one is interesting because I feel like the stealth parts of it are there's two sides of it which they both kind of try and claim to be stealth, but one is more of a traditional stealth system and one is more of a parkour system. But I love both of them, and that is a fun game.
The funny thing about this discussion is I'm realizing I don't hate stealth as much as I originally thought I did, but I think it's just that, like, the first games that I played that were like this were Metal Gear Solid, and God, I hated them. Like, it was the worst experience ever.
There are quite a lot of stealth games that I vehemently dislike.
I've actually never played a Metal Gear Solid game. Like, I didn't have a PlayStation growing up, so I didn't get into one. And then by the time I got one, it was like 2009, and the series was so long that I didn't really want to go back because it seems like everyone sort of presented it as this really important series of games.
Yeah.
Some of them are do
similar
interesting
situations.
things. Like, well, okay, 2 and 3 do interesting things.
Have I talked about... Never mind. Metal Gear Solid is very much like a particular video games writer.
I have also never played any of the Metal Gear Solid games, except, like, 2 years ago, I tried to play the first one finally, and I got about 30 minutes into it and said, to hell with this.
I'm not sure I'd ever recommend the first one.
Well, it's that sound. That sound gives you nightmares when you've been spotted.
I actually liked the first one.
I have played and really, really enjoyed the original Metal Gear. That was a great game.
I actually have played that one too.
That's the one they re-released on the Game Boy, right?
Probably. It was 8-bit, so yeah.
Then I have also played that one.
I have not.
It is a completely different sort of game.
Well, I feel like Metal Gear missells the player fantasy that it actually is. Like, you see, Snake, and he's this badass, and he always has really cool weapons, and then it felt like he spent most of your time trying not to actually do any combat.
I think, sort of going back to the stealth thing, one of the things that really I haven't seen a game do it in a way that I think is good is MMOs just don't do stealth well in general.
Nope.
No.
It's just like it's either a cheat button or it's weird and convoluted or it's like a state it's like a buff that's kind of hard to keep on yourself that you need to use your best abilities.
I think more in general, multiplayer games, stealth has a tendency to not work well.
Certainly not as an add-on. I mean,
It's
sometimes
super hard to balance.
Sometimes it's really good if the game is built around it. I think that some
Thinking
of
Splinter Cell here.
Oh my god, yes. So Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow has the second Splinter Cell game had. I don't even necessarily like the Splinter Cell series because it frequently does that if you're seen, you're done thing. Although it stopped doing that in more recent games, which has made me like it a whole lot more. But the second one had some of the best multiplayer I have ever played in a video game. It did, if you're not familiar, it did 2-on-2, mercs versus spies. Two people were big burly dudes with machine guns who were the mercenaries contracted to defend whatever level. They could set up traps, they had some amount of time to like set up traps and take up positions, and they knew the layout of the place and they knew how to set it up. And then two other players were spies who had a bunch of like tricky weapons, were way less heavily armed and armored than the mercs, and had to get into some place, like sneak in someplace and do something. And it had, on top of that, it had built-in voice chat. And the voice chat was awesome because you were on radio with your teammate, but it also would ping a small area around you based on how loud you were. So you could hear if the like two spies were really chatty or the mercs were really chatty, you could hear them. And a lot of times in the better matches, like good teams of mercs would keep checking in with one another because you didn't know the status of your partner. Like it didn't tell you how your partner was doing. So your mercs would constantly be checking in on one another. And so the spies would listen for the merc check-ins. And you could do all sorts of things. Like there were all sorts of ways to kind of sneak around this level and find out where people were. And the whole thing was built around this sort of asymmetric stealth game. It was awesome. I'm so sad that nobody makes multiplayer like that anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what it takes for something like that to work, is for it to be built very much with that as the intention, where
it has to be the
these
entire
players
game.
will be characters who can stealth, and these players will be characters who can't.
Yeah.
And there is no, it's not like maybe they'll have stealth, maybe they won't. Who knows? We'll just have to balance it so it all works. That just never that never seems to work very well.
No.
Okay. Sounds like we've touched on that subject, at least, quite a bit. Anybody have any parting thoughts before we move on to the next thing? Okay. So the next topic is actually something Thalen brought up, but apparently Thalen and Kodra and Tam are all on the same wavelength there. The characteristic of luck in a board game.
Yeah, and what got me thinking about this in particular is basically all day today I've been hanging out with some friends, and we've played some board games and played a game of the Star Wars RPG and did some other stuff. And we played two board games in particular. We played Betrayal of the House on the Hill.
Wow.
And we played Tokaido. And it was interesting. So basically, Betrayal of the House on the Hill, in both cases, the game ended up being extremely one-sided. We played twice. The first time, by the time the haunting occurred, the heroes were so kitted out that the traitor didn't have a chance in hell. And even with that being the case, one of the players who ended up not being the traitor basically never got to do much of anything. He never was one of the ones that found an item. When he did find an item, it was one that he couldn't remotely do anything with because he didn't have the appropriate stat. Incredibly annoying. In the second game, the haunting happened so early that the heroes had collected basically nothing of any use whatsoever, and so there was absolutely no chance at all to defeat the traitor.
How early did that haunting happen?
The fourth omen?
Okay.
Fourth or fifth. It was pretty early. We had not even been into the attic, at all, or the second floor. The ground floor was reasonably big. The basement was almost entirely unexplored. Nobody had been upstairs at all. Exactly one item had been found, and it was not a combat item. And this ended up being a haunting where combat was absolutely necessary. It was the tentacle monster.
So we played a game of Betrayal at House on the Hill as well today. Tam and I did.
And how did your game go?
Turn 6, the haunting happened. We had the first 5 symbols we got were all omens.
Yeah.
And so on the 5th omen, Tam rolls 4 and haunting starts. It was there were, I think, at this point, only 6 non-starting tiles on the board.
Wow.
And one of them was the magic elevator.
Oh God, the mystical! I hate that thing. I've decided I just absolutely hate it.
It became kind of important for us to be able to do any sort of movie. The only way that we came close, the only way that we managed to claw back into the game was ridiculously lucky rolls.
Mm-hmm.
But so Tam has the book and the girl, and gets this scenario, which is the mummy wedding, and he's the traitor. And we're looking at this, and he has to place the girl 5 spaces away from the mummy, or as far away from the mummy as possible.
Just 3 spaces.
Distance. So she's only 3 spaces away, because that's as far as there is on the upper floor.
Right. This is as far as exists.
And we're reading our thing, and what we need to do is we need to find the book. If the book isn't out already, we can search the omen deck for it when we discover an omen room. Tam has the book.
Oh no.
We're well on the back foot at the beginning. But unfortunately, Tam has to find an omen, and he just hits
5 rooms.
Blank after blank after blank for Tam.
Yep. It was 5 rounds of me looking for this stupid ring.
This was not the worst game of Betrayal at House on the Hill I've ever played. It actually, if we had finished it out, it would have been kind of a bunch of tense die rolls to see who wins. But what happened was it devolved into Betrayal's crunchy bits. And Betrayal's crunchy bits are impenetrable.
Yes. Not making me want to ever play Betrayal in the House on the Hill.
It is an atmospheric game. And when things go well, it can make for a really interesting story and be really entertaining. But it is extremely easy for luck to go against one side or another to an absurd degree.
I have actually only had bad experiences with this game. But I always forget that it's the game that I have bad experiences with, so I end up playing it again.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about it, I have never played a game of Betrayal at the House on the Hill that wasn't lopsided.
There's a whole bunch of games that are all Lovecraftian themed that have really similar names, and I've never had a good enough experience with any of them to be really excited. And so they all
they all just kind of blend together.
Mansions on a hill haunting betrayals.
Yeah.
What did you think of Eldritch Horror that we played?
It was okay.
I think Eldritch Horror is better because it's at least an established setup with things in. There's not quite so much luck to it. There's definitely some luck, but it's not to the same degree.
It wasn't a game that playing it made me not want to play it again.
Yeah.
Thanks to luck.
Eldritch Horror also really needs the the person playing the bad guys to really know what they're doing, though.
The Eldritch Horror doesn't have a bad guy player.
Okay, oh no, I'm sorry.
You're
I'm
thinking of Mansions.
I'm thinking
Mansions of
Mansions.
Madness.
See,
I'm thinking
Mansions of
Madness.
Eldritch.
See, they all spin together.
Betrayal on the Hill.
Eldritch
Eldritch
Horror
Horror
is
is
the
good
one.
too.
Eldritch Horror is the one that plays more like a Cthulhu pandemic.
Right. Yes. Yep. There's Arkham Horror, and there's Eldritch Horror, and
There's Elder Sign.
and there's Elder Sign, and there's.
You guys are not helping the case here.
There are okay.
All these
Fantasy
games blur
Flight
together to me.
Fantasy
is really
Flight
into Cthulhu.
has the rights to make Cthulhu board games, and they are going to make a lot of Cthulhu board games.
And all give them
So many.
ultra similar names,
Yup.
so you can't tell them apart. This is why whenever somebody suggests a Cthulhu board game, I'm never excited. Because I don't know which one, and I know some of them are miserable to play.
And in a lot of them, you have the exact same player characters and the same like stat mechanics and everything.
Yup.
So
Yes.
it does get a little silly.
Mansions of Madness is my favorite of these.
Mansions of Madness, I think, is the best one because it
actually has
tells a
puzzles.
story.
It has cool stories. It has, I think, my favorite puzzle mechanic. There are actual puzzles that you have to your adventurers have to try and solve by and they get randomized. It's really clever how they do it.
Yeah, and basically you have you get a number. You get to take a number of moves, moving tiles around in the puzzle based on your character's mental stats.
So so even if your character only has 3 moves and they can't solve the puzzle, they can put it into a better solving state for the next person who touches it.
Yeah. Mansions of Madness is the closest thing to it's basically, if you remember this game from back in the day, it is Cthulhu Hero Quest.
Yeah. Its problem is that its scenarios are not even close to balanced.
No,
the first one is well balanced. Every other one falls down real fast. The opening mansion, the first scenario, great. Every other one, if you have somebody who's playing competitively as the monster controller, is going to go poorly in a egregious way.
Yeah.
You're still not helping your curse.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I know, but I'm not going to say I love any of these games, but Mansions of Madness is my favorite.
Yeah. But so we played a couple of games of that, broken up, one at the beginning of the day, the other, towards the end of the night. And, they were not great, honestly. And then we also played a game of Tokaido, which is the game of having a pleasant walk along the coast of Japan, which has almost no luck aspect to it at all. There are, a couple of card decks that are shuffled, at the beginning. And so, the order that things get drawn in is different. But, there are no movement dice. It's, just when it's your turn to move, you decide how far along the road you will advance. And it's on the whole in your best interest to not advance super far because it's always the turn of whoever is furthest behind. And we played that game and everybody really enjoyed it. Everybody had a really good time, whether they were winning or not, whether, there were no hard feelings, no crankiness at all on that one. And I think to a great degree that was because everybody felt, even when they, even if they weren't winning, they felt in control of what they were doing. They didn't feel like they were being screwed over by the dice. And that makes a big difference.
It really does. In a similar vein, so I used to play a lot of War Machine, minis game. And I got out of it when I got into a bunch of games in a row that were my opponent or I just don't have a chance. This is super one-sided, and there's randomness either just won a game for no reason or loses a game for no reason. Congrats, you somehow managed to flub what shouldn't have been a good roll, what should have been a roll totally in your favor, and you just lost the entire game.
Yeah.
And when I moved to Infinity, one of the things that I really like about it is that Infinity is not really any less random, but it's much, much less swingy. It has a bunch of sort of balancing mechanics such that it's very difficult to steamroll an opponent in that game without actually outplaying.
So I think there's another thing going on here, which is in Takedo, other players doing well means their number of points is higher.
Yes.
But what their number of points being higher doesn't do is remove your ability to do stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's just going to decide who wins at the end of the game.
Yep.
Until the end of the game, them getting this one card doesn't mean like half of your options are cut off.
Right. I mean,
And
there is
then-
the element of if they move to a particular spot, that spot's no longer available for you to move to because because he can only hold so many people. But
Sure.
beyond that, they're not directly, that and then the food mechanic at the end that if they got there first, they get to pick their food before you.
But
That's the only interaction really.
What's not happening is like your options are not slowly dwindling as your opponents advance.
Right.
And that's something that happens in a lot of and especially in War Machine.
Yeah, it's very easy to end up in that situation where some things have gone bad, and because of that, you're like you just don't have anything left that you can do. Like in Betrayal, it's like, okay, I attempted to attack this thing, and well, it beat me, so it did damage to me, and so now the stats that I would use to attack it are lower. So
Yes.
great.
Yes, your ability to survive is being like it's degenerating and your options are going down and down.
And I mean, in a minis game or in any game where I'm playing against another person, there's nothing more unsatisfying than for either me because I'm losing or for my opponent because they're in a no-win situation to just like call it. No, I'm done. There's no way out of this. Like it's just completely unfun for both sides.
Yes. Yeah, the point at which it's like, well, I mean, this game is over, but the game doesn't know it's over.
Yeah. It's like we would have to play another hour to get to the actual end of the game, but it's clear that the ending is decided at this point.
So this actually brings up another topic, which is concession in games. Because in some games, that is absolutely in the culture. StarCraft. Like at 10 minutes, if you've lost, you concede. You haven't actually lost the game, but you know you've lost.
Yeah, StarCraft is really, really, really fascinating in that regard.
But so is Magic. Magic is also very much yep, I concede.
Yeah.
Like if I know there's a point at which I know I've lost this game and I will concede.
But I mean, I think there's a difference between having a culture where it's okay to do that and whether or not it's fun or engaging or at all satisfying to win against a person who concede.
Yeah, well, I mean that's one of an extremely long list of reasons that I have less than zero interest in ever playing competitive StarCraft. But it is definitely on the list.
Yeah.
Well, back in the day in Magic the Gathering, you used to fall on your sword a lot, or at least players would do this regularly, where they would they know they're going to die on the next turn, so they tap all their land and mana burn themselves to death.
Or just do some drastic thing to do as much damage as you can and go out in a blaze of glory.
Yeah, that was usually me. Is I would do some really foolhardy things just because it was all I could do, and okay.
It's like you're going to beat me next turn, so I'll do as much damage to you as I can. So at least I feel like I made it a fight.
So with Magic now, since if you're playing tournaments, it's best 2 out of 3. Typically, it's I'd rather just get to the next game and try and beat you there.
Yeah.
Is sort of the mentality.
Well, I think the thing's true on a board game is okay, if it's going to take another hour to wrap this thing up, let's just get it over with and play something that's actually fun.
And that's actually what we did. Once it got all down to the dice rolls, we're like, this isn't fun anymore. Let's do something else.
Yeah, and if anybody playing the game isn't having fun, something has gone wrong. If nobody playing the game is having fun, you really should just stop and play something else.
Yeah.
Now the other game we played today has a random mechanic where every single time the board is randomized. And this can lead to, it could theoretically lead to massive advantages, but they're so we played Codenames. I finally got Codenames in, and I love this game.
This is a game that has new Super Mario levels of built-in acrimony between friends, and
It's true.
Oh dear. Oh, this is the one with the red words and black words and all that, right?
Like this is a grid of 25 words. Some of these are your words, some of these are your opponent's words, some of these are neutral words. One word loses you the game. One person has to give a single word hint to their team and a number that is how many words they think they can guess with that hint.
And then
possibly you see where this is going.
And then their partner has to guess a number of words to try and figure this out. How well are you inside that person's head? Like,
yeah, this is one of those things where the better you know your partner, the better you're going to be at it, I imagine.
I feel like this game is way funnier if you play with people you don't know.
It really is.
Yeah.
But
it's also a really good way to discover that you don't know if you don't know somebody as well as you think.
It's also got some really tense moments. So, apparently, I didn't even realize this, but one of the clues was poison, and
I wanted Kodra. I'm looking at a board and I see one of the words I need him to guess is tail, and one of the words I need him to guess is spider. And so I go with poisoned.
And I felt spider was really obvious there. I was like, yeah, spider is obviously poisonous, so I guessed that one immediately.
And then he starts looking around the board, and as he's looking around the board, I realize that the lose the game word is bolt.
Oh no!
So poisoned crossbow bolt. I fortunately finally was like, yeah, Scorpion's tail has poison in it. I'll go with that. But
I was thinking like lightning, but no. Words have meanings.
Yes. Oh, and then sometimes I reveal that I know absolutely nothing about musicals. Because so musicals. Apparently we were going for deck
We've got 2 words left. They're deck and round. And I need to link these somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Or I could make it obvious and go for one, but like our opponents are catching up.
It's better to get them both at once.
Yeah. So I'm thinking deck and round. Well, singers singing often sing in a round.
Yep.
And a singer on stage is known as them being on deck.
Yeah.
I could do this with musicals. So I give the clue musicals.
The problem was conductor was still on the board. And so I'm like, okay, conductor's the only one that seems obvious to me. So, and it was fortunately a neutral word. Since it was a neutral word,
it just ended our turn.
And I'm stuck there stewing, trying to figure out what the heck musicals is. Thankfully, the next one was a lot easier, which was gazebos. Which deck and round made a lot more sense for.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, all right, fine.
As long as like the word deadly isn't on there.
Kodra is not a theater buff.
Bolt was on there, and I was trying to remember if in the Knights of the Dinner Table he used a lightning bolt or a fireball, and I finally remembered it was a fireball.
Yes, but Knuckles, King of the Wall Climbers, absolutely shot at the gazebo with his crossbow.
I'm glad I didn't remember that. Oh man, Codenames is a lot of fun.
I'm reminded of this is a story that a friend of mine actually told just today, but I've heard it times before. But playing a similar type of game, one of those games where you've got a word and you have to give clues to people. I don't remember which one it was. Maybe Taboo. It's one, but you can give multi-word clues. And the word was airtight. And he knew the person who he was trying to give the clue to extremely well. And so he looks at him and says, G.I. Joe chemical weapons expert. And they absolutely won the game.
Wow.
Because my friends are huge nerds.
I don't even remember that character in G.I. Joe. And I was a big G.I. Joe fanatic.
Yeah. So what I love about Codenames though is just how many different configurations there are. all of the like placement of where blue, red, white, and black words are on a deck of like 40 cards. But there's no top side to those cards. So you arbitrarily pick one of those cards up, place it on a certain side, and put it down in front of you. So there's like 160 different possible configurations these words could be in.
And then there's a deck of what, 150 words?
200 words, I think,
Yeah.
that you're randomly just placing out in this 25-word grid. So
it is an endlessly replayable game.
yeah, and it uses randomness to set it all up in a very, very clever way. I think games that use randomness right are sort of like, I like using random to set the game up and then letting you go from there.
Well, it's like really, really good procedurally generated content, like Minecraft.
Yes.
Is the same idea. It's a randomized setup and works super, super well.
Yeah, but at that point, you've got your brand new game, your personalized game, but you don't need any more random elements after that, which is really clever.
Yeah, set it up randomly, but then have it be entirely up to skill from that point on.
Yeah. Okay. Any final thoughts before we move on to the next topic?
Nope.
Cool. Okay, so Grace, this is another one of yours, and I think we all thought it was a decent one too. Video games is a common ground in meeting people.
Yeah, and we can make this one a little bit quicker, maybe. But I went to a conference this past week, and was meeting some other, graduate students and other people from, industry and academia and all over the place. And it turns out that so I had a randomly assigned roommate for this trip, and it turned out within about 15 minutes of getting into the room and unpacking my stuff, she and I were suddenly having a conversation about video games, and suddenly the ice was completely broken. And even though she played mostly different types of video games than I do, it was still that little piece of common ground that suddenly even though we were at this meeting for the same sort of science, suddenly we both spoke the language of video games also. And it was just funny how quickly it smoothed everything over and broke the ice, and everything was kind of great after that. Like the awkwardness, everything was pretty much gone. So I thought it was interesting. And again, later in the week with some other folks that I met, the same sort of thing happened, either because of a pin that I had, or just randomly asking, because I suddenly realized that it was useful to ask. And just I don't know. I'm such an awkward person socially. I think a lot of people who spend a lot of time playing video games sometimes can be, and just having that little piece of commonality makes huge difference.
Well, I guess, like for me, a lot of the frustration and awkwardness of meeting new people is, especially like in my age group, is knowing that more than likely, if it's another guy that I'm going to spend time with, they're going to be into a bunch of things that I have no interest in, like, sports or, automobiles, or, there's a common set of man topics that you're supposed to be adept at, if you're
Especially
my
in the area of the
age.
country.
Yeah, in the area of the country that Thalen and I live in, like, there's certain things that you're just expected to know, and it's like that kind of destroys the whole thing. It's like, I don't have those parts. Like,
Well, I think honestly, I mean, for girls, it can be the same way. Like, I don't necessarily get into a lot of things that other women my age like. And boy, it can be really hard to find, other women who are super into video games. So suddenly, like, sharing a room with this other woman who also played games was huge.
Yeah, because you go from being like complete strangers to immediately, I don't want to say like you're instant friends, but you at least have this common thing that you can talk about that makes the entire experience more enjoyable for the next X number of days.
Yep. Exactly.
It gives you this feeling that, okay, maybe we are kind of on the same wavelength. Maybe maybe we're not completely different people.
I think it's very interesting because you mentioned that neither of you really play the same games, but a lot of the broader game, like if you step up from games, the language is very shared between them. Like
Oh,
not
absolutely.
100%, but at a pretty good portion. Like games often have points, or they often have like objectives. They have, and then like there are various resources that you're trying to manage. Like HP is probably a term that a lot of people who play video games might know. There's a shared lingo there. You speak the same language, as it were.
Well, and there's a certain safety feeling when you know there's someone that you can actually relate to in an environment, and and that may be opening the door to other people that they already know that also are safe by comparison. So I don't know. It's like I was really worried when I went to PAX last year, because like I don't really do well in large crowds, but it was just different. Like it was this big group of people for the most part like me, and even though more than likely none of us really liked the exact same things, it was close enough that I could have conversation with random people standing waiting in a line. And that is the most terrifying experience for me otherwise. Like the happiest moment I have at work is when I step into the elevator and it's empty, because I don't have to make awkward small talk about things I really don't know anything about.
Yep.
And just knowing like you can hang out waiting in this line, and more than likely there's going to be something where your interests share. Like, so even if you don't like the same current games, chances are you're going to like Zelda or Mega Man or something from the past that is a point of reference. And from there you can start building forward. And it's like this short code for interaction is, okay, well, I know if they like this, then that tells me some things about their personality.
I wonder when we're going to get to a point where it is such a ubiquitous thing that you're able to assume everyone plays games. Like,
got news for you.
well,
2010.
what is it? What?
2010.
I thought right now it was like 50%.
Of the population plays games?
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
Current game population is in the low 90s.
Oh, okay. So maybe it's just waiting for the culture to catch up, where people feel like safe talking to safe assuming that everyone plays video games.
Well, I think there's a difference between people like my mom, who totally plays video games but does not assume any of the identity that goes along with being a gamer or having that sort of history of playing some of the games that maybe we all have in our common past. So, there's a difference between, yes, almost everybody plays some games on their phone or plays, has played solitaire on their computer back in the day or whatever, versus having that be kind of a major hobby.
Yeah, or being a cultural point that people feel comfortable like.
Well, I mean, the thing for me is it's not that we're not already there. It's that if you hang out if you like pulled out your phone and sat down at a somewhere public, like a coffee shop or an airport, and exclaimed painfully that you just messed up your Candy Crush level. And I've seen this. You'll see a bunch of people look up and nod understandingly.
I'm going through a similarly weird experience right now. I have an R2D2 beanie, like stocking cap beanie, that I'm wearing because it's cold. And I get these weird interactions where, like, someone will see me and they kind of like nod or wink knowingly when they notice that I have an R2D2 on my head. But then the opposite happens where I have people that just look at me like I'm the strangest person in the world because I have R2D2 on my head.
So I do work for a West Coast technology company at this point. Our entire off-topic mailing list is nothing but people being excited about The Force Awakens. Like it's entirely a bunch of threads counting down the days to The Force Awakens coming out. Like all the way up to like our C-level executives. It's quite amusing. I was actually in an interesting thing this week where I was in the cafeteria picking up some snacks, and the quote unquote office cooler talk was about Destiny. So
That's cool.
Yeah, like I think we're getting there where it's like
you are also on the coast.
I guess what I'm saying is that in a lot of ways we're already there. It's just different games.
Yeah.
Well, I think the problem is like people don't feel safe talking about it in a workplace environment unless you work in a quote-unquote campus-style environment that is known for being geeky or nerdy or whatever. Like on my row, like we're all developers, we're all nerds. Like we can totally have conversations about games, but those conversations die the second you step off of our row.
I think that's the culture, maybe at where you're at. I don't know.
Well, it's not necessarily the culture of where I'm at. It's the culture of where Thalen and I live.
More generally, the area. There's still that feeling that this is a thing that's somewhat childish, and it's not an adult topic for conversation.
You should be interested in sports instead.
Like this is, and to be fair,
sports and shooting things.
What we're talking about here is why I love going to conventions so much. Because when I go to Gen Con, like I can let my nerd hair hang down. I can be the weird LARPing fanfic writing guy that I am. And I don't feel like I'm going to get judged for that.
Well, and so Texas is not exactly known for being an open-minded part of the country, but it totally felt like stepping into PAX South that it was just like this aura of acceptance. Like whatever anyone was doing seemed cool to anyone else.
Yeah, I actually have the opposite experience at cons a lot of the time, where it's like I don't feel like I belong here. I don't feel like I am as into this in the same way as most of these other people are that I fit in.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I've mulled over it a lot.
I think I know the feeling you're talking about, Tam, that just kind of you're looking around and you see there's people cosplaying as these characters, really excited about all this stuff, and you're just kind of like, I am not as into this as you are. And
I think it all depends on the type of con.
It's a little I think it's a little bit of that, Thalen. It's also I've spent so long in the industry that
you know how the sausage is made?
Yeah, like the conversations I have, like a random conversation I'll have at PAX, for example, will be like at some point it will always take a turn to, oh, and the devs totally messed this up, they're such idiots, or like what were they thinking, or like the opposite where like, oh, they're so perfect and they know exactly what's going on and they're brilliant geniuses, and it's like both of these I'm uncomfortable with.
Right. See, you are not an innocent like they are. You have seen behind the curtain.
Yeah, I mean, somebody will. I had this experience at PAX West earlier this year where I was wandering around chatting with people, and somebody made the comment that they're really excited about the new Guerrilla Games.
Horizon.
Yeah, which looks great, and like. My very first thought was, oh yeah, my old boss and a good friend of mine both work there now. I'm really excited about it. But like, it was a total conversation killer because it stopped. It was just like, well, I'm not actually the same.
You're coming at it from a different. You're on a different wavelength than they are. They're thinking about like it looks really cool and I like and this and that, and you're thinking these people that I know are working on it and that's really cool, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as the not as into it thing, like I've experienced that myself, but it's always been like, so for example, a comic book convention. Like I like the idea of going to a comic book convention, but I am not like really a fanboy of any of the writers or the the actors that end up going to those things. So I always think to myself, what the hell am I going to do with my time? Like, what is there really enough for me to go see that I'm going to be that interested in other than the vendor room? So I end up not going because like it just doesn't feel like there's enough to occupy an entire whatever of time going there.
Yeah. Yeah, in the old days, most of my time at conventions was spent, playing D&D and stuff. But
Yeah.
it seems like you don't see as much of that at conventions unless they are specifically RPG conventions these days. It's, everybody's playing like Magic and stuff like that instead. And I don't know.
Well, I think in part it's because Magic doesn't require as much setup as, say, an entire D&D session.
Yeah. Something like that really needs to be like a scheduled thing on the convention schedule, all sorts of support.
You should go to Gen Con, where that is absolutely a thing you can get into.
One of these days, I really do want to. That and or Dragon Con, or maybe Origins.
But I definitely think like that common ground is a beneficial thing to have. Especially like I guess it works the best if you have two people that have gamer as a core identity.
Yeah, I think absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's probably where like it gets weird for me.
I think like, okay, this is like an offshoot and it's going to get into some weird territory, but I think the reason why I've always latched onto gamer is because I don't have a lot of things that I feel like I belong as part of. I mean, I'm not athletic. I'm not a sports fan. Even when it came down to like war games, I never was a fan of any of the fixed armies in Warhammer 40k. So like you've got people that were Blood Angels players or Ultramarines. I always created my own chapters, so like it never felt like there was this thing that I liked enough to adopt it as part of my identity. I mean, I'm not political, I'm not religious, so I never felt like I had that many things that I truly identified with. And it was always, general pop culture geekery and gaming that were the things that I felt like I actually belonged as part of. And I guess that's part of the reason why I like even though there's some seriously sketchy stuff going on in the gaming sphere, I'm hesitant to abandon that as part of my what I identify as.
Yeah, I mean, after all of the disgustingness associated with the word gamer, I still refuse to relinquish the word as part of my identity because seriously, screw those guys. I belong here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's I think if you spend time when you are not actually playing games thinking about the games, then that is the point when it's really a part of who you are. When it's something I don't know that you get meta about, maybe I don't know.
Yeah. One day I will be able to turn a particular part of my brain off, and I will be able to just be a gamer. But
well, honestly, what you're expressing is the same thing I have about programming. Mm-hmm. Like there was absolutely a time when I was really excited about programming technologies, but I have done it for so long and I have had varying consequences of it that I just like the last thing I want to do when I get home is even think about programming. And I think it's like for me, anytime I do something for a living, it ruins it for me. But anyway, we got a ways off topic there. So, final topic that we had for tonight, and we've already gone on lengthy, but I want to have this discussion anyway. We brought up the topic of cheating in video games. And I don't remember who brought it up.
It was me. And specifically in single player games.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, because I've been playing a lot of Fallout 4 and basically decided that weight restrictions are bullshit and I was done with them.
Yup.
and it has just immensely improved my game experience. Like everything else is fine. I'm not like, other than like, oh, I lost my dog, I'm gonna figure out how I can find him again without having to run all over the place looking for him.
Yeah.
I haven't messed with too much other stuff, but man, just not having to deal with the weight limit was great. And at first I was like, oh, I don't know, it's kind of cheating. Do I really want to, start messing with that? And yes, I do. It was great and it improved. It took a piece of the game that was just frustrating and just cut it right out, and now I'm happy.
Well, and I think the thing for me is like I actually set out like I notoriously open up the console, player.setav carry weight equals some silly number that I don't have to care about. That's just something I've always done in Fallout or Skyrim or any of them. And this time I set out telling myself, no, I'm gonna be legit this time. I'm gonna care about carry weight, and I finally realized that this is dominating my gameplay. Like this is the central thing that I am doing, is taking 5 trips to clean out a building.
Yeah.
After I've already gotten everything out of there that was otherwise, because like I'm a packer in these games. I like picking everything up, especially now that it all matters.
Yeah, at least in the previous games, a lot of the junk was literally junk, and you could leave it there, secure in the knowledge that no, you would never need that broom.
Yeah, I really didn't need the 30 brooms, but by God, I wanted to pick them up because it was a thing.
But now it's, I can get aluminum out of that thing. I can get nuclear materials from that, or glass, or, I need these things. Got to build stuff. Put a scope on my rifle.
And worse, if I take too much and suddenly I'm burdened, then I'm like, well, I'm not too far from my whatever base, so now I'm just gonna pick up everything and just auto run on super slow and be annoyed. And like, no, that's not a way to engage with a game. Like, no. Like, yes, I could ditch all the stuff in a container someplace and come back for it, but no, this is my stuff and I'm taking it with me.
Yes.
And mostly I ask myself, is this important to my enjoyment of the game? And carry weight was absolutely not important to my enjoyment of the game. Like it was the worst possible part of the game. I know Tam has stronger feelings on this.
I don't know how to call them strong feelings.
Different feeling.
Yeah, for me, carry weight is in a game like Fallout. Carry weight is this really compelling game mechanic that makes me pay attention to other mechanics in the game, and makes for a bunch of adventures that I wouldn't otherwise have. Because like I don't pick up everything. I pick up the stuff that I know I need, and I learn about the various stuff I need by needing it, as opposed to just picking up everything and then never being uncertain about having the stuff I need. Like every so often I'll go to build something in a settlement and I'll be like, oh, I don't have any copper. All right, I'll need to go find copper. So the game has a whole system to let you mark things that have copper in them. And when your perception score is high enough, it'll actually highlight objects in the world that have things that you're looking for, which is something I never would have noticed if I hadn't, I hesitate to say artificially limited myself, but if I just like set my carry weight to something crazy. But I also, it means that I think about the guns my enemies are using and what pieces I need and pick up those pieces. And, sometimes I'm faced with a difficult choice, like I really want all this oil, but it's heavy. Maybe I'll make a trip back, or like I need to go on a particular adventure to go find oil. Where might I find it? Oh, well, there's this factory I haven't explored yet. Let's check out this factory and we'll go on an oil finding adventure. And so like the limitations of my inventory then create scarcity for me, which makes me value the adventures I go on to find stuff that I need. As opposed to me going into the first, every new location and picking up literally every single object and bringing it back with me, and then never ever worrying about having enough raw materials for whatever it is I want to build.
I think
it kind of drives a different style, I guess.
I think there's also like an underlying gameplay style that's different. Like for me, I like to find a new place and be secure in the knowledge that I can sweep through it and I can kill everything in it and I can take everything from it and then move on. So there's that like satisfaction of like finding a new place and exploring it and feeling like I have totally conquered it and it is mine now, and everything that was worthwhile in there is now mine.
Yeah. And I like decision points. And for me, everything I loot is a decision point, and that's really cool because it means that it's like I don't have this like you said, like it's not for me, it's not about conquering the place. For me, it's about making interesting decisions. And sometimes I'll be like, well, I should have explored this place and picked up all the Abraxo cleaner that I needed. Whoops. Let's go, I guess, hunt for Abraxo cleaner because I need fiberglass.
So for me, it is absolutely enabling me to leave the hinterlands. And for our listeners that won't remember what that's from, it's that in Dragon Age Inquisition, you guys kept telling me to leave the hinterlands. I couldn't leave the hinterlands. There was too much to do. I had to go get stuff. And so, like, I'm 58 hours into Fallout 4. I have yet to go anywhere even vaguely close to Diamond City. I was spending like a large chunk of that time was me making trips back and forth between base and whatever new location I found, slowly, painstakingly cleaning it out.
And like I get it, but that's not fun for me at all. Like I don't have the fastidiousness necessary to enjoy leaving a place picked clean.
Yup.
I do the stuff that I think is cool, and then I move on.
And so, like, yeah, like I've actually gotten a hell of a lot more accomplished once I threw the carry weight up because it stopped taking me 5 trips in a place to pick it clean, and I felt like I was done with it.
Yeah.
And to some extent, like if there was something interesting that was happening because of my 5 trips back, then it would still be value to me. Like if I had to walk to the place, for example, to clean it out, there's all sorts of stuff I could encounter along the way. But I'm not. I'm rapid traveling back and forth between base and the place.
Yeah. And that makes perfect sense to me. For me, it is not a foregone conclusion that I'm going to pick up every single item in the game. And so, like, the idea of going into a place and picking up everything sounds like an hours of tedium to me.
But
it's also a kind of thoroughness that I understand that other people really love.
Yeah.
If you're not leaving a place with a whole bunch of dead naked guys and empty shelves everywhere, well, then you're just not done with it.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. It's like I'm not done until the little things is cleared, and I know at the same time that I've literally picked everything out of there that I could possibly use for future settlements or anything like that.
Sometimes I leave places even before they have a cleared marker.
Oh my god, that's blasphemy.
Yeah.
This is extremely rare, I'll be honest.
I only just made it to Diamond City like a couple of days ago, to a great degree, because any area on the map that I enter, it has a map icon. If I enter it so that the map icon lights up and shows me as having visited it, well, now I have to clear that area out.
Yep.
Because I've been here now. I no longer have a way to tell that I haven't been to this place yet. So I got to get everything.
I usually use the cleared icon for that. Like I won't, if I'm like going to do something, if I have like a particular goal that I'm interested in, I'll find stuff on the map, but I'll keep going and then come back to it later. Like, oh, I really need 308 ammo. I've got four bullets left. I'm not gonna walk into this factory full of super mutants.
And I have like this whole ritual too, whenever I play a game like this, where I will go into a new place, I will carefully kill everything in the place, and then I will begin to ransack it.
Yep.
Okay, I find that odd. Like, I like to just, I'm going to clear this room and then sweep the room clean and then, like, move along. So I don't backtrack. I guess I'm maybe not quite as thorough, but I just grab everything that I see as I'm going along, unless I'm like in the middle of combat.
Well, I guess I feel like I'm always in potential danger until I have pacified the area.
Grace is like, it's like the difference between a swarm of locusts and like, I don't know what the alternative would be. I got started on this metaphor and it kind of
But this is exactly what I think is so interesting about Bethesda games in general is they're this giant maker of games.
Yeah.
As far as, and I don't mean like Bethesda is a maker of game. The game itself is a maker of games. Like there's unbelievable numbers of ways to play this thing. And none of them are necessarily right or wrong. Like, it's just a thing. Like, this is what you can do.
Yeah, it's like, it's enjoyable for me to play the inventory game because I'm playing a different game.
Like, I'm kind of looking forward to cranking this up to survival mode because that was actually my favorite way of playing New Vegas, was where I had to manage all of my supplies of various aid items so I didn't starve or die of dehydration or whatnot. And I'm looking forward to finding out what survival mode's like, and then what mods I can enable to make it even more so.
Man, I feel like I'm already having to survive a lot anyway, because there are moments where I just go roaming around the map looking for rad stags and mole rats, and those are basically what I survive off of right now to keep my hit points up.
Oh man,
I don't let things get close enough to me to do damage that makes me have to eat a lot. Like that would be bad for me.
I think I ate something by accident once.
Well, you have to understand, like, I am habitually never using VATS. So I use the shit out of stim packs too, but like stim packs I reserve and I ration them even though I have like 140 now. I ration them for moments when I need instant health regeneration.
I got bad news for you regarding stim packs and instant health regeneration then.
Have you not used any?
Stim packs are not instant health regeneration.
Well, they're significantly faster than food. Like, they tick a hell of a lot faster than food.
They also weigh less than food. When in doubt, use the heaviest thing first. Although for Bell it doesn't matter because he doesn't have inventory weight.
No,
So.
I don't care about that part. It just, I don't know, like it feels more natural for me to eat rather than keep pumping drugs into me. So I'm constantly cooking stuff, and I'm getting tons of levels from cooking.
There's that too. Is you get decent XP for cooking food.
But like I know there's certain areas of the map where I'm likely to find rad stags, and I'm likely to find mole rats, and so I'll go off on these little caravan missions to restock on my food.
They also heal more than stim packs in most cases.
I think, as I understand,
30% of your health.
Yes, stim packs are a percentage, and food is just a flat amount.
Yeah, so like Deathclaw steaks are pretty much a full heal, or close to it. And I usually have to go through several stim packs when I fight a Deathclaw.
That's what power armor's for.
I don't know, like, I get that.
Isn't enough. At least not in my experience.
I mean, like, I don't know. Like, I always walked around in power armor in every other game, but because it's a vehicle, I don't want to use it.
Now that it's chewing up some of your precious resources that you could instead be hoarding.
Yes, exactly.
I might need it later. Can't drink
For
that potion.
what?
I might need it later.
I might need it later, yeah.
For what?
I don't know. I've only seen like a fraction of the map.
Yeah, that's the problem. You don't know. There might be something worse. If I use this now, I won't have it for later.
Look, it's the whole Boy Scout thing of always being prepared. Like, I am always prepared for needing to build something or needing to fight something
withstand 3 hours of dedicated machine gun fire.
You probably don't use any of your drugs either, do you?
Nope. I put them in a chest beside the old lady.
Well,
wow.
I want you to. Wow. Okay.
Wow.
No, seriously. In my towns, there are containers beside the things that I need to use the other things with. So I always go drop off my drugs at her chest because I know she's the only time I'm going to use it. I play these games in a very specific way.
I've actually refrained from giving Mama Murphy any drugs yet because
Yes, same.
it seems like Preston would disapprove, and I like Preston, so
I don't care about Preston. I have a dog.
Wow.
I was going to, and then she got up out of her chair and won't sit back in it and won't talk to me unless she's sitting in her chair. And so I was like, well, I guess we're done here.
I put her chair right beside the workbenches, so she's pretty much always there.
Yeah.
And I'll go talk to her, and if she says she can get a vision, it's time to feed her some drugs.
No, for me, she stood up out of her chair for some reason and has never sat down in it again. I'm like, well, I guess we're not going to talk ever.
Given her more drugs, obviously.
So the cool thing though is like every so often she'll have a vision, and it'll like unmark or mark something on your map that you can go explore later.
It's true.
I'm all about feeding the old lady drugs.
But
yeah, I have no qualms about feeding the old lady drugs.
I want you to do a thing. Next time one is available, make a save because you're going to need to. Find a machine gun turret and just stand in front of it and see how long you can survive on those stim packs, because I'm curious. Because I'm pretty sure it's a while.
I can withstand a machine gun turret just standing right in front of it, firing at it for a long time. I mean, I have enough health that, it's not a big thing. Like, I can take on Deathclaws pretty regularly. I got cornered in a pit with one, and I had to use 2 stim packs, but that's it.
Maybe find a Deathclaw. Find a Deathclaw and see how long you could just have it beat on you with your stim packs.
So, okay, the bad thing is at any given time, I am running around with about half a bar of radiation, because I don't want to waste my resources and heal myself with Radaway.
Well,
what are you even saving it for?
I don't know. I might need it.
If you have more than a third of a bar, you might as well use it.
Look, I have more caps, and I could just, heal the Radaway whenever I'm in a town with the doctor. Thank you.
Caps are in way shorter supply than Radaway, I know.
Yeah, but I also play this other game, and this is I've done this since the very beginning, is I will load up on armor and stuff, and then go to a town and then basically sell back enough stuff to steal all their caps, and then I'll go to the next vendor and sell back enough stuff to get all their caps, and then go to the next vendor.
I guess if you're carrying 300 tons of concrete, you can just hand that to a vendor.
Oh no, I would never sell concrete. That's useful. I'll sell a bajillion pipe guns because I don't need those.
You can deconstruct those for super useful items.
There's screws in there.
Yeah, there's screws in that. I would never sell.
You have to have that perk to get screws. Like, I never get screws off those stupid things.
You do need the perk.
Yeah,
that was like one of the first perks I took.
Yeah, I don't have that. I've got armor, and I've got like gun nut up to rank 3 and armor up to rank 3, but I literally the other day I looked in my workshop because I dump a lot of this stuff just in my workshop. I had 43 left leather arm pieces just sitting in my workshop. It's interesting, I'm sure.
Everyone is speechless.
Everyone is horrified by, are you, Belle, do we need to have an intervention? Are you this much of a hoarder in real life?
No, at least...
Can't get rid of carry weight.
The funny thing is at least once or twice a year, we go through these massive cleanouts and give stuff away to Goodwill in real life. But in the game world, I just hold on to this because I never know when I'm going to need it. But because of this, I have 6 or 7 shanty towns. And on all of them are basically 70 or higher happiness, and I don't know.
Belle, I've seen pictures of your quote-unquote shanty towns. You build fortresses.
No, Aurelia builds fortresses. I
have slightly more restraint than that.
Yeah. Well, the problem is I haven't unlocked the thing that allows me to build with concrete yet, so maybe I'll build the wall whenever I get that.
So this is the other funny thing for me, because I hate the carry weight restrictions, but my town has the minimum amount of stuff to keep it being a town and to do the quests that it had, and all of the stuff that I find that's going to upgrade my armor and my weapons, and then to save in case I might need it later to upgrade other armor or weapons, or if I get another point in gun nut and can upgrade better things.
Yeah, I
Mostly
know.
treating my graphic materials. The towns aren't really getting much from me.
I visit them like a couple times. I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't go to each one every time I play, but I'll go to one or two of them and work on it a little bit, and then I'll go out and explore for a while. And this is a deep hole that I fall into every time I play a Bethesda game. And this game just feeds it even worse. Like it's all the characteristics of these games just expanded out forever. And I think probably to quote Kodra, I am playing a completely different game.
Yes.
Well, that's not unexpected.
Yeah.
I got picked after all, right?
Yep. Well, I mean, I put in hundreds upon hundreds of hours in Minecraft doing essentially the same thing, gathering resources and building towns. Like in Minecraft, I would have entire rooms of my fortresses that were nothing but a bunch of chests to sort items, and each chest represented one kind of item. And the funny thing is like, I am nowhere near that organized in life, but I apparently am in the game world. Anyway, we have run on a long time tonight, and we've had, I think, 4 interesting topics, even though I have everyone in a stunned silence at this point. Anyone else have anything else that they want to talk about before we start to wrap things up?
I can talk about pet battling at a different time.
Okay. So let's do the where folks can find us thing. Valen.
I am at Thalen Firebeard on Twitter, and my blog is thalenfirebeard.blogspot.com, and it posts on AggroChat.com.
Damn.
I post fairly regularly on Tamriello.com. I'm at Tamriello on Twitter, and I'm reasonably good at responding to people.
Kodra.
You can find me on Twitter at Kodra22, or you can read my blogs at AggroChat.com.
Grace.
You can find me on Twitter at DiscGrace, and my blog is moonshinemansion.wordpress.com or through agrochat.com.
Ash.
You can find me on Twitter at hidden_wings. I blog at ashfang.com, where you post to AggroChat.
And I, as always, post daily on Tales of the Aggronaut at aggronaut.com, and I am Belgast on Twitter and Belgast on a Nook. And hopefully you found the episode interesting, and we'd love to hear any side comments, especially on what your obsessions are in Fallout 4, or any of the other topics that we've talked about. Anyway, hopefully you have a good night, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye!
Good night.
Bye.
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 Good night.